She was the face of terror in Alfred Hitchcock's most iconic film. Elegant, mysterious, unforgettable. Tippi Hedren became a star overnight with The Birds. But behind the scenes, she was living a nightmare far worse than anything Hitchcock ever put on screen. He discovered her, he shaped her, and then he tried to own her. At first, it was subtle, an unusual level of attention, long stares on set, private calls late at night. Then it escalated. Control, isolation, emotional blackmail. Hitchcock didn't just want Tippi to act, he wanted her to belong to him completely. When she resisted, he didn't get angry. He got vindictive, and he had all the power. He locked her into an ironclad contract. He banned her from taking other roles, and when she refused his advances, he made sure Hollywood would forget her. What Tippi Hedren endured wasn't just artistic tension, it was psychological captivity. And the most terrifying part? No one spoke up. Not back then. She was his muse, his obsession, and nearly his prisoner. But the truth behind their working relationship and the toll it took on her life is much darker than anyone ever dared to admit. Natalie K. Tippi Hedren was born on the 19th of January, 1930, in the small town of New Ulm, Minnesota. Her father ran a general store, and her mother stayed home to raise her and her sister. From the outside, it was the picture of American simplicity, a tight-knit Scandinavian family in the heartland. But beneath the surface, it was a life marked by quiet discipline, emotional restraint, and a subtle pressure to conform. As a child, Tippi didn't cause a trouble. She didn't rebel. Instead, she watched and waited. She found freedom in imagination. At just 5 years old, customers at her father's shop would watch her twirl between the aisles in handmade dresses, striking poses like she was already on a Paris runway. Her beauty was striking, but it wasn't just her face that caught attention. It was her stillness, her grace, her poise. Even when she didn't speak, she owned the room. At 15, the family moved to Minneapolis, and Tippi was quickly scouted by a department store for a modeling job. She had no training, no experience, but her presence was undeniable. By the time she was 18, she had booked catalog shoots, local ads, and even some runway appearances. Then came New York, then Paris. But through it all, she remained quiet, observant, careful. There was always a sense that Tippi knew how fragile beauty could be and how easily it could become dangerous. She had no idea that one day, that beauty would become both her ticket to stardom and her trap. By 1961, Tippi Hedren was a successful model living in New York, appearing in national commercials and magazine spreads. She wasn't a household name, not yet, but her face was everywhere. Then one day, she received a phone call that would change her life forever. Alfred Hitchcock had seen her in a television commercial for a diet drink. He didn't know her name, but he knew he wanted her. Not just for a role, for something more. A new kind of star, a project, a possession. He called her in. No audition, no script, just a contract. A 7-year deal with one of the most powerful directors in Hollywood. Tippi had never acted before, but that didn't matter to Hitchcock. He didn't want an actress, he wanted a canvas. He oversaw every detail of her transformation, her hair, her clothes, her voice, even the way she blinked. He trained her with private coaches, isolated her from outside influences, and began crafting the image of the perfect Hitchcock blonde. In 1963, The Birds was released. It was an instant sensation. Tippi's icy elegance, her haunted eyes, the sheer horror of her scenes with the attacking birds. It captivated audiences worldwide. Overnight, she became a cinematic icon. Then came Marnie in 1964, more psychologically complex, more controversial. Tippi was praised for her performance, but behind the camera, something was shifting. The line between director and star was blurring. Hitchcock's obsession was growing. and so was Tippi's unease. What looked like the birth of a new Grace Kelly was starting to feel like something much more dangerous. The deeper Tippi Hedren stepped into the world of Alfred Hitchcock, the more the walls began to close in. On set, she was the star, revered, respected, praised, but off camera, she was something else entirely. A subject, a possession, a prisoner of control, disguised as mentorship. Hitchcock's obsession grew darker with each passing day. He controlled every aspect of her schedule, demanded her presence at all times, and forbade her from speaking to male colleagues. He sent her notes, watched her from afar, and began making inappropriate, deeply personal advances, ones she rejected again and again. But rejection didn't stop him. It enraged him. When Tippi refused to surrender to his demands, Hitchcock retaliated, not with shouting, but with silence. He isolated her even more. He manipulated scenes to humiliate her, and in The Birds, he orchestrated one of the most infamous, behind-the-scenes nightmares in film history. In a pivotal scene, Tippi's character is locked in a room as birds swarm and attack her. Hitchcock had promised the birds would be mechanical. They were not. For 5 days straight, real birds were hurled at her, pecking, clawing, flapping against her face. One bird latched onto her eyelid. She collapsed in tears, trembling, emotionally shattered. The production doctor ordered immediate rest. Hitchcock refused. The trauma was real. The panic in her performance, not acting. After Marnie, she had enough. She confronted Hitchcock, told him she would never work with him again. But she was still locked in a contract, and Hitchcock had no intention of letting her go. He didn't release her, he didn't cast her again, he simply shelved her. Tippi was frozen in time, under legal control, professionally paralyzed. Hollywood, following Hitchcock's silence, moved on without her. This wasn't just the fall of a career, it was the quiet erasure of a woman who dared to say no. Tippi Hedren didn't vanish from the public eye. Not immediately. After Marnie, she appeared in a few independent films, often under lesser-known directors, struggling to reclaim the momentum she had once held in her hands. But without the support of the studio system, and with the silent resistance of one of its most powerful men, she found doors closing, roles drying up, and the phone ringing less and less. She had gone from being the chosen one of Alfred Hitchcock to someone Hollywood didn't dare touch. But the real tragedy wasn't just professional, it was psychological. For years after The Birds, Tippi suffered from night terrors and flashbacks. She never fully recovered from the 5 days of trauma on set. Her nerves were shot. Her trust, especially in men with power, was fractured beyond repair. What Hitchcock took from her wasn't only screen time, it was a sense of safety, of self-worth. Still, Tippi never played the victim. She raised her daughter, Melanie Griffith, quietly rebuilt a modest life, and poured herself into activism, particularly for animal rights. But when she finally broke her silence about Hitchcock decades later, it wasn't with rage, it was with clarity, calm, and pain. In interviews, she revealed everything: the obsession, the control, the fear. She called it what it was: abuse. And when asked why she didn't come forward sooner, she said simply, "Who would have believed me?" Her story was a warning and a prophecy. Long before Me Too, long before Hollywood reckoned with its own darkness, Tippi Hedren had lived the reality so many women would one day echo, and she survived it, but not without scars. Tippi Hedren's story is not just about what was taken from her, but about what she chose to reclaim. She never returned to the Hollywood spotlight in the way she once had, but she didn't disappear either. She became an advocate, a protector, a survivor who refused to let her pain be the end of her story. In the decades that followed, she built a sanctuary for big cats, spoke out for women's rights, and slowly began telling the truth about Hitchcock, not out of vengeance, but out of necessity, so that the next generation would know the price some women paid for silence. Her daughter, Melanie Griffith, would go on to become a star in her own right. but she never forgot what her mother endured to shield her from the same darkness. Tippi's legacy isn't just her films, it's her resilience, her refusal to be erased, her quiet, powerful message that survival is its own kind of victory. She was more than a blonde on a poster. She was a woman who fought back, even when no one else dared to. And finally, decades later, the world began to listen.